The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Welcome to Aging Horizons from the 51st Governor's Conference on Aging. In today's show, we'll be talking about mental capacity and what it is, how you make decisions, maybe your parents or your grandparents, and how we lose a little bit of our mental capacity as we age. If we're aware of it, we can prepare for it, and maybe we can work with our loved ones so that they can make better decisions. We'll talk about that and so much more. Stay tuned.
I was diagnosed with diabetes in 1992 and I went into denial. It made me angry. I was a professional chef and I didn't want to change my eating style. It took me a long time to get serious about managing my health. My perspective changed from resentment to one of loving my body, the container for my spirit. Getting help from my diabetes educator supported my goals of improved self-care. I want to feel good and have a great life. My diabetes educator helps me do this.
As a Vietnam vet, returning home, nothing was easy.
Veteran Glenn Maynard and his wife Tracy.
For years I've struggled with PTSD and related issues, including living in a camper.
Then Energy Share helped us with a deposit last year so we could get into our own place. I'm so glad we asked for help.
The only thing that got me through these times was my wife and the support of my community.
If you need help with your home energy bill, call or visit Energy Share, helping Montana families get through the winter since 1984.
We've been married for 57 years, and we've always been very, very close. And Bessie fell and broke her hip, and we put her in the nursing home. And I wanted to get her out of there in the worst way because we married for better or for worse, and we're going to stay that way. And the personal care that comes in here and gives us a hand is equally as important as I am to her. Personal care is the answer to it all, and without it, we couldn't do it.
Good care is your right. In Montana, there's over 11,000 beds in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. If you or a family member needs assistance or help in obtaining information about care issues and placement options, call 1-800-332-2272. If you or a family member need information about Montana's long-term care resident rights, or if you need help solving a problem or a complaint about a nursing home or an assisted living facility, call us at 800-332-2272.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll be talking about mental capacity, why that's important to understand that it's happening maybe to your parents, your grandparents, maybe even you. So we have a contract attorney with the Senior and Long-Term Care Division, Susan Gobbs, and you're kind of focused on diminished capacity. Let's define that right off the top.
Okay, capacity, according to Merriam-Webster, is the ability to make a decision. So we have different levels of capacity. I think of them as rungs on a ladder. The more complicated the decision, the higher up you are on the ladder. So capacity could be anything from deciding if you want chicken noodle or tomato soup to deciding how you want your will written or your power of attorney.
Yeah, and the impacts that'll have in the future on you, right?
Right, yeah. Exactly. And what we find with the senior population is sometimes we assume that someone has a lack of capacity. In other words, they can't make decisions. And capacity is not all or nothing. It's not zero sum. Some days capacity may be better than others. And even if you've been diagnosed with a dementing disease like Alzheimer's, it doesn't mean you've lost all your capacity to make decisions.
Yeah, and you have the right to make poor decisions too, right?
Exactly. Just because you don't make the decision your kids want doesn't mean that you are in need of going to court and having your rights taken away. Just means you might not make the decision your kids might make.
Well, what takes it to finally go to the courts and where you'd probably get a guardianship where they take away your right to decide some of your
Right. We look at a person's ability to take care of themselves. So there's sort of a three-prong rule. So can they take care of themselves? Either financially and or physically. If they can't, are they aware of options that could happen? In other words, I can't drive anymore. I can't get to the grocery store. How am I going to get food into the house? And then the ability to know you're not meeting your own decisions. In other words, you are aware that you haven't had food and you're hungry, or you're aware you haven't had a shower in 3 weeks, but you know you can't take a shower because you're a fall risk. So we look at all of those things together to determine whether or not you still have the capacity to make these decisions, or whether someone should take over that for you.
And I believe the courts are very tough on saying that to take those rights away. They're very rights positive.
Well,
right?
it's what we call legal death. Yeah. When you become the ward, you are as if you were a child in the eyes of the law. Yeah. So therefore, you don't get to decide where you live, maybe who you associate with, what clothes you wear, what food you eat. Mm-hmm. Your entire life can be controlled by someone else.
Someone else. And is that someone else, they'd be in the same town? I mean, can it be bad, I guess, for the individual that's being guarded?
Well, I think it's hard because we don't give training to people who become guardians. Yeah. So sometimes they don't know what their role is. And it's hard when somebody is a ward because, again, they've had their rights taken away. Mm-hmm. And there are various levels of decision making that could be done without a guardianship being placed.
Uh-huh. And does this kind of focus mostly on the seniors, the elderly? Is it age dependent that it happens?
Well, no. I have worked as a public interest lawyer my entire career. I've represented a lot of people before the Social Security Administration who have diminished capacity. So you might have someone who has a severe mental illness. They might have a cognitive disorder. They might have severe substance abuse. None of that is dependent upon your age.
Yeah.
And all of those can happen when you're a senior, too.
Yeah, right. Well, now, are there special programs that you become eligible for once you lose those rights, or like Social Security? Can you get that, I don't know, early or more?
It's a kind of a heavy bar, a high bar, I guess I'd say. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you're diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and you have the appropriate documentation, you can get on Social Security disability earlier than you normally otherwise would be.
Mm-hmm. And do you kind of help those people? I mean, how do you initially get involved with this? Someone calls you up and says, Mom's making poor decisions with the checkbook. What can I do?
Right. Our program is a legal referral and advice program, so we don't directly represent anybody in court. But we do give a lot of advice. We refer to other programs. We talk about, we may get a call from a child out of state. They may have heard some stuff, but they haven't been around. Mm-hmm. So then perhaps it's appropriate for Adult Protective Services to look in. Or it may be that they are unaware of programs in their community that are offered by the area agencies on aging. Maybe they don't know about Meals on Wheels. Maybe they don't know about congregate meals. Maybe they don't know about home health care providers. And we try to steer them in the right direction. Primarily, I do a lot of wills and estate planning, and you want to make sure that the person who's doing that has capacity, that they know what they have, and they are comfortable with who they're leaving it to. If they're appointing an agent for powers of attorney, they need to be comfortable with that agent and feel like that person has their best interests at heart. And it's very important that they are in the right headspace to do that.
Exactly. I mean, you don't want to wait too long. The time to do it is early, and that's part of planning for any age group, right?
Right. I think particularly with the powers of attorney, the durable powers of attorney, I feel like anybody 18 and older particularly needs a healthcare power of attorney. You could be in a car wreck. You could be unconscious. If you're over 18, your parents can't make that decision for you, nor can your spouse or your children. Unless you have appointed an agent, you kind of leave the doctors and the medical personnel in a very bad place. Also, if you have any assets, it's important to have a financial durable power of attorney in place.
Yeah, that's fascinating information. I'm learning so much doing these interviews here at the 51st Annual Governor's Conference on Aging. And the legal aspect, I think a lot of people ignore that until they think they absolutely need it, and maybe sometimes it's too late. We'll continue talking about the important legal forms you need to have at any age. Stay tuned.
Suddenly I couldn't speak.
I knew something was wrong. I called 911 immediately. My arm didn't hurt, it just stopped working.
I knew the signs of a stroke. I called 911.
Know these warning signs, and if they happen to you or anyone with you, call 911. Treatment within 3 hours from the start of symptoms can make a difference. Stroke is a major cause of disability. It is also highly preventable. Learn the signs and act immediately. For more information, call 1-888-4STROKE.
You mean I can get help paying my prescription drug premiums?
Let me get this straight. I could be eligible for help with my family's prescription premiums even though I own my own home?
And our assets won't be counted.
If you're a Montana resident enrolled in the Medicare prescription drug program, you could be eligible for help paying your premiums. Call or visit the Big Sky RX website today to find out, even if you think you're over income.
What do you know about that? I'm eligible.
I have so many questions about power of attorney.
Well, some powers of attorney are for finances and others are for healthcare decisions.
A power of attorney designates an agent who would make decisions on your behalf.
While making a power of attorney, you have the ability to control your agent's power.
You also have the ability to decide when that POA would take effect.
Wait, am I giving away all my rights?
Power of attorney isn't a license to make any decision for you, just those that you've specified.
Your agent should be somebody that's working in your best interest, but it should also be somebody that you would trust.
What if they try to abuse their power?
Protective measures like third-party accounting, secondary signatures, defined spending and gifting limits can help protect against financial exploitation. An agent's powers can always be limited by a customized power of attorney, and they can be revoked by you or the court if the power of attorney is abused.
So carefully drafted estate planning documents can help ensure that your finances are monitored, but not abused.
If you or someone you know is being exploited, please report to Aging Services Bureau at 844-277-9300 or the Legal Service Developer at 1-800-332-2272. This message sponsored by the DPHHS Aging Service Bureau.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and we're coming to you from the 51st Annual Governor's Conference on Aging down here in Billings, where we have access to wonderful speakers that are presenting to everyone here. Rejoining us now is Susan Gobbs. And Susan, we're talking about diminished capacity. And let's define that. Is that something that can happen just through aging, or is there other factors?
The normal aging process, we all slow down a little bit. We don't read as fast. We don't read as small of print. We have delayed reaction times. 25% of the folks 64 to 75 have a hearing loss. Folks 75 and above, about 50% of those folks have a hearing loss. There are all sorts of different factors that affect our ability to communicate. And sometimes people think of that as being a capacity issue. I deal with people who have verbal aphasia after a stroke. It doesn't mean that their brain is not functioning, it means they're having difficulty communicating appropriately. But the other thing we see with diminished capacities are things like strokes, urinary tract infections, diabetes, any kind of a chronic illness can affect your ability to think straight and to make appropriate decisions. If you're too hot, if you're too cold, if you're hungry, if you're thirsty, all of those things will affect your ability to make decisions. Time of day can affect your ability to make decisions. The thing about capacity is it ebbs and it flows. So the important thing is to realize that if somebody is not making sense or you don't think that they're making good decisions, let's go over medication interactions. Let's go over all the possible factors it might be before concluding that this person has a very serious illness that we need to take them in and get them in the nursing home or have them have guardianship.
Guardianship's done. I know I had a relative, it was drug interactions. There's so many drugs, and the doctor and the nurses didn't catch it, but she was nonsensical.
Exactly.
and couldn't communicate. But now communication's an important part of diminished...
well, you want to be able to support somebody in their decision-making process. And sometimes it's very hard for seniors because they get paralyzed. What decision should they make? And that's where it's sometimes helpful if someone will come in who's unbiased and will give them facts, information to help them with that decision process. That doesn't mean your kids get to come and take over and that they get to make those decisions for you. It's always better when the person it's affecting gets to make the decision.
Yes. Well, I know when some individuals can't drive anymore. We know it, but they don't. And it's really difficult to take a driver's license away from them.
Exactly.
So a family member wouldn't be a good person to go in there, or
it depends
maybe
on the
multiple family members.
It depends on the family.
Yeah.
If they have a good relationship with the parent, if they are not determined that this person has lost all their abilities to make decisions, sometimes the third party can be better because it's not as emotional. It's very hard for kids to see their parents start to decline. And those roles switch because of that. And sometimes they're not the best person to come in and help. Sometimes they are.
Well, sometimes they have diminished capacity because their loved one's that way.
Well, you know, that's the whole thing. We're dealing with a lot of 95-year-old women in Montana, and I'm getting calls from their 75 and 80-year-old children saying, I think mom's going to outlive me, what do I do? So just because someone's a senior doesn't mean that there might not be multiple generations of seniors in their family.
Or people interested. Their kids.
Yeah.
Well, now, being an attorney, there are certain legal documents that one can prepare for the future in case you have the diminished capacity. What would those documents be?
Well, as we mentioned before, durable powers of attorney, both for healthcare and for financial. Those are very important. They give the principal, who is the person who's granting the power, gives to the agent the ability to make certain decisions on their behalf. However, the person, until they lose their capacity, they still have the right to make those decisions. So I always say that if you have somebody who has a power of attorney, their job is to support the senior, not get in front of them and interfere with decisions they might make. And I think sometimes that's why seniors are reluctant to give powers of attorney, because they think that the person they give the power to will come in and completely take over their lives. And sometimes that does happen, but that's not the role. The other thing about a power of attorney is it can be revoked. You can revoke it in writing and say, nope, no more power of attorney for you. You have stepped over the line. So those are important. A living will or a living will appointment to talk about your wishes for your final illness is an important set of documents. Wills are also very important things because, again, you want to talk about what you want to happen. And we have a a list of tangible personal property, and that's where you put Great Aunt Sadie's gravy ladle. And who gets it, and who gets the car, and all the kind of stuff that you want your kids to know before you aren't able to tell them that anymore.
Well, I know on the power of attorney, medical power of attorney, they can be springing, and you can limit what they can do. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, with springing language, they don't go into effect until your doctor says you're not capable of making decisions. Now, that's a double-edged sword. That gives you more control up front, but maybe your doctor won't ever tell you that you don't have that decision-making capacity. And if your doctor won't say you can't make the decisions, but you can't make the decisions, well, the agent can't make the decisions, nobody can make the decisions, okay? So that's the springing language. What was the other one you asked me, sorry?
Well, we're talking about medical power of attorney, and I guess our
You asked about springing, but you asked about something else. Sorry, guys, we're watching this.
We're going to figure that out in the next segment because we're just about out of time. As you can tell, there's a lot of conditions to this. We want to inform you. These individuals are available at the telephone number we've had on the screen. Stay tuned. We'll talk a lot more about this.
Crackling fire, good warm. Forest fire, bad warm. Keeping the home fires burning, good warm. Watching the home burn, bad warm. Your family deserves the kind of warm that comes from being able to pay the heating bills. Whether you're a homeowner or a renter, the Low Income Energy Assistance Program may be able to help. Call today to find out if you're eligible. We can help you get comfortable with winter's high energy costs.
With as many as 1 in 10 Americans at risk for Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, chances are someone you know and love will receive that diagnosis. When that happens, you may well feel devastated, but know that you are not alone. Help is available. You don't have to face dementia by yourself. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline 800-272-3900 for guidance and support.
You sure you can see?
Yeah.
Are the headlights on?
Yes.
Do we need chains?
No.
Need to slow down?
You know, you're probably right.
Winterize your vehicle, then winterize your mind. Stay clear of snowplows until they pull over, and it's safe to pass. Drive safely and arrive alive.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm Brian Lamore. And when we left the last segment, we weren't sure what one of the questions I asked was. What it was, or is you can limit the power of attorney to an individual. And Susan, what kind of topics or powers would a person limit or grant?
If you were talking about a financial power of attorney, perhaps you have a third party who's keeping an accounting of how the money is being dispersed. Perhaps you put a limit on how much money this individual can spend without a second signator. Maybe you say, you don't have the ability to gift my money to somebody. And you can go through these things that say, you know, you can spend $5,000 a month or $500 a month without having a second person in on it. And the whole idea is your comfort level and the amount of assets as you have. But those primarily are the ones you can do on the financial part. On the healthcare power of attorney, we always have special instructions. Maybe you're an organ donor and you want that mentioned. Maybe you don't want to be unhooked from life support until you've been on it for a week. You can put certain things in place so that the person who's acting as your agent knows, do you want to be resuscitated or not? All of the very important conversations that you need to have so that your paperwork is in fact the way you want it.
And your wishes are carried out when you have diminished capacity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these are durable powers of attorney because they stay in place even when you have diminished capacity.
Okay. Well, you know, you mentioned a couple options that an individual can do, and I think individuals aren't really aware of what they can do. Now, you offer some services through the telephone number on the screen. What are some of those services? How can you help those people make those forms?
We do legal clinics throughout the state. When this airs, we will be done for the year. We will start again next spring. We travel to various communities and we do the durable powers of attorney and the wills and the living wills. And you can make an appointment. We also do those telephonically in certain circumstances, not all circumstances. Then if you have just a garden variety problem, I'm having trouble with my neighbors, my landlord's trying to evict me, I just had my car repaired and it won't work. Anything that is a civil legal action other than family law, and we don't do criminal law, we can talk to you about it and we can refer you perhaps to someone who can represent you, or we can send you to the self-help law clinics or any other legal resources we have in the state. We don't represent anybody in court, but we send them to people who can.
Who can. I know now, I filled out all my paperwork through a legal clinic about 8 years ago. And is there a certain time period when you want to reaffirm, change, or these documents are no longer
considered? You should come see us next year, Brian.
Okay.
It depends. The law changes periodically. The probate law just changed this year. So there are certain documents that change over time, and we're always refining our documents. So we're happy to see people that we've seen before just to give a look-see to the documents and see if we need to change some. If you have a kid that dies, it's probably time to change your documents. If your spouse dies, it may be time to change your documents. Any kind of a major life event like that might trigger a need to at least review your documents again.
Well, I know in working with our aging services that when an individual can't make a decision and they're in the hospital and they don't have a living will, it tears families apart.
Sure.
Tell us more about why that's so important.
Well, it's important that your loved ones know your wishes. And it is very hard to make a decision about end-of-life decisions, whether it's putting you on a respirator or taking you off a respirator. If your loved ones know what you want, when they ultimately make that decision, they will be more at peace because they know they're doing what you wanted.
Yeah. And that's done through the legal form, right?
Right, that's done through the living will or our specific stuff in your will. But yes, the whole idea, again, is conversation, followed up by appropriate paperwork.
But sometimes it's difficult for family members to talk about death, isn't it? When do you want to broach this with your family members? You know, we're airing before Christmas. That might be a good time to talk to them.
I would say that you probably shouldn't do it at Christmas dinner when people have had a little too much wine.
Or turkey.
I think it's always good to set it aside and not make it a pressure situation. Because again, this can be a series of conversations. It doesn't have to be one, we have to decide this in the next 15 minutes. It's just like the finances. You need to talk to your kids about your finances. And it shouldn't be when they're having to figure out how to get you in the nursing home.
Right, yeah. And maybe you can't communicate and you can't tell them
Exactly. Open communication and conversation is important, but again, it can be ongoing.
Yeah, and the appropriate legal documents. And we're talking about, is it 4? A will, living will, medical power of attorney, and power of attorney?
Financial power of attorney. Those are the 4 big ones,
Yeah, and you'll help people
Yes, we will.
with the forms. You'll review them and make sure they're okay. But like you mentioned earlier, you can see some options if someone wants to limit what the people can do.
Right, and we are concentrating on people who don't have a lot of assets. So it's really important that if you're a multimillionaire, that might not be the attorney that needs to look at your paperwork. Somebody else might need to do that. So it's important to realize that we're not the be-all and end-all for everybody, but we are here for people who can't afford to pay an attorney, who need to have these services and otherwise would not get them.
Yeah, and if you got the money, it's probably a complex will, and you need
you need somebody besides me.
Do that.
Yep.
So, but you can probably afford to have it done.
Yeah, you can probably do that. Yeah.
That's great. Well, Susan, thank you for being on the show today. We really appreciate that. And for our viewers, again, we've been talking about diminished capacity, and I hope you understand that you need to get your forms together prior to a serious life event. And as Susan mentioned, any time of your life you need these documents, even 18, because of the importance of other people making decisions for you because you have not made the decisions. And it will help you, the area agencies on aging and senior and long-term care, to fill out these forms throughout the community by calling the number on the phone. For Aging Horizons, I'm Brian Lamore. Thank you for joining us.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.